Welcome everyone to this episode of the Palmetto Guardian. I'm Sergeant Chelsea Weaver.
And I am Airman First Class Danielle Dawson.
And today we have a lot of firsts for us. We have Airman Dawson on with us. She's new. Also, we are in the field. You can tell if you're on YouTube. We're at South Carolina State College, and we're here with a very special guest. So, sir, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then we're just going to kind of go into the podcast.
Okay. Just one correction. So it was South Carolina State College when I went to it. And then later on they changed to South Carolina State University. So, yes,
Gotcha.
It was a college. So my degree says college. But I'm Lieutenant General Beagle. I graduated from South Carolina State in 1990. Commissioned, active duty in the infantry, and been in ever since.
Awesome. So when you went to college or even through high school, were you planning on joining the military at that point, or were you kind of just not knowing what was in your future?
Yeah, no, I was. So I played, 3 sports in high school. I mean, I grew up in the upstate of South Carolina, so near Spartanburg, and played 3 sports. And, my desire was to go to college and, play sports, a sport, one of the 3. And just knowing that wasn't going to be a reality, I went to a recruiter, went to MEPS here at Fort Jackson. I came back home at 17 years old with the paperwork and put it in front of my mom to sign it. And she said, no, not doing it. You're going to go to college. And I said, well, we can't afford it. And so, true story, I went back to high school. I'm in a dilemma. I had a guidance counselor actually tell me, said, you're not college material. I said, okay. My grades weren't, terribly bad, and, played 3 sports. But I went to one of my friends and I said, hey, I got to apply for a college. I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to South Carolina State. I said, great, where is it? He said, Orangeburg. I'm like, okay. And, I applied, got in, came here, and it was great. Best decision, ever.
Awesome. So you're from South Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you currently stationed at right now?
Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So I command the Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth, and that is, I wouldn't say our largest command in the Army, but in terms of what we control and what reports to us is probably one of the largest, because every other installation, so you think Fort Benning, Fort Leonard Wood, Fort Sill, Fort Gordon, they all report to Fort Leavenworth.
Okay. Awesome. So we were supposed to have another guest with us, General Jenkins, which a lot of you probably know if you're in the Guard, South Carolina National Guard. So did you guys kind of meet here at college, or did you know each other beforehand and then ended up at the same school? No,
we didn't know each other beforehand, but in the way we started here, I mean, most of us, as freshmen, you probably don't know each other going through as, in ROTC, because the class is so big. Back then, we called it the Bulldog Brigade. And so the ROTC program was literally a brigade. I mean, when it formed up, it was like a no-kidding, like Army brigade.
Wow.
So lots and lots of freshmen, lots of sophomores. So we really didn't know each other, unless you stayed in the same dorms, and Jenkins and I didn't. But by the time you contract as a junior, then we started to know each other, because now you're going to go into the Army, whether it be any of the compos 1, 2, or 3. Mm-hmm. And so I got to know Jenkins as a junior because we spent a lot of time together. We spent a lot of time at Fort Jackson because that's where we train. And then as a senior, of course, a lot of classes together. And then, we just were really in a solid groove and bond at that point, as a cohort of seniors.
So I did want to hit on a more personal level. What were some character traits that you felt carried you through your training, your ROTC training at South Carolina State, and then what motivated you to just keep going to where you are right now?
Yeah, no, I mean, the key characteristics were, I think, for me, my background in sports, and, we did a lot of hard stuff in sports, had a lot of hard coaches, and when it came to ROTC, when I asked, because I started, here I ran track first until I got injured, and then I recovered and couldn't go back to track because, some injuries you can't, recover from and perform at a certain level. But knowing what they did in ROTC, I asked some of my friends that were, roommates, and they said, you can't do what we do for ROTC. I said, well, what do you do? Well, we do a lot of physical training. We go out, we play in the woods, and, we do some drills and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, that sounds kind of easy. I mean, I'm still physically fit. I like to go work out. I said, I'll join next semester, and never looked back at that point because it was fun. It was just a great group of, people to be around. I mean, the physical fitness was like the easy part. I grew up in the, upper part of the state, so a lot of woods, so that was easy. So it was really the mental toughness and grit that I gained from sports that, made everything come fairly easy.
Wow. Okay.
Awesome. So, what was your experience like at or in ROTC, and then how did that lead you through or influence your leadership?
Yeah, we had a ton of great cadre. I mean, I think if Jenkins were here, he would tell you the same thing. They were super hard on us. It was like being on a combination of active duty and basic training for our entire time, because they would not give us a break, to include if we missed like a Saturday morning training or, Thursday, one, they would make us go find each other. So we knew, like Jenkins, all of us, we knew, each other's phone numbers. And back then we didn't have, cell phones. So this is dating myself, right? We didn't have cell phones, but we all had a hard line, wherever we stayed. And most of us, as juniors and seniors, we stayed off campus, but we knew where everybody lived. And so they would say, if somebody didn't show up for PT even, hey, go find them. Where's Beagle? Where's Jenkins? Go get them. And we had to go drive to their house, bring them back.
The whole everybody? No,
just one. They look at one person, Dawson, go get Jenkins. And, you're off driving. You go, hey, man, you better come on, let's go. You miss PT. And they did that several times. I mean, so me and one of my roommate at the time decided we weren't going to go to a Saturday morning training. We'd been out late at night. We get a knock at the door. And as one of the captains, he's like, are you two coming to training? We're like, yes, sir. We'll
now we are.
Yeah. So very tight bond, but our cadre, they were awesome. And they just truly led by example. I mean, they did everything right. They, didn't do things that they wouldn't expect us to do, and just truly set a great example from PT to, just how they communicated, how they operated, was just the epitome of what right looked like.
I want to ask, so how do you lead by example? Like, what are some things that you keep at the forefront for yourself to make sure people are following you and seeing consistency?
Yeah, one that's the key thing. You got to be consistent. So I always say, how are you in terms of being effective, and then you got to be consistent about it, and then that gets you efficiency. So I literally used those three things, and you'll see a lot of people that are just not consistent, whether it be in their actions or their words. Just be consistent. I mean, you can ask any of my teams. I'm very habit driven. I do things, the same way. And that just makes it easier for people to get to know you, to get to understand you, because you're very consistent, in what you do, and your actions. People know. They just know, like, yep, he's probably going to do this or do that, because you're so consistent. And I think that's one of the key things as a leader, to be consistent. You're not, you're high one day, you're low the next day. You're just constantly consistent. And especially when bad things happen, people want to, see how that leader operates when bad things happen or bad news. And, if you're consistent, just in your tone, how you operate, how you do everything, then everything works better. The team is comfortable. Everybody around you feels better, and they know they can grow, and then nobody feels, threatened, or they feel like they're in a bad environment.
Nice.
So what led you wanting to go active duty versus General Jenkins? I mean, he went guard. So did you kind of have an idea already that you wanted to go active, or was it kind of just once you got to graduation, that's when you determined what path you wanted to take? Yeah,
I think for me it was always going active, like right off the bat. But I think a lot of my peers, I'm trying to think, with Jenkins, some were already in the Guard when they were in ROTC. So we had a lot of our peers that did that, and they just stayed with the Guard, didn't go active duty. And some were in the reserves, and they just kind of stayed on that similar trend. So just knowing kind of what they did and what they would do. And for me, it was like, you mean you have two jobs? You have to do two things? And I didn't want to do two things. I'm like, no, that's not going to work. I'm only good at one thing, so I can focus on one thing. But it was always active duty for me, and to get out. I grew up in a very small town in South Carolina, so most people have heard of Ellery, which is closer to, Orangeburg, this area. But then I grew up in a place called Innery, which is closer to Spartanburg. So there's two, and a lot of times I'll say I'm from Innery, and they'll go, oh, you mean Ellery? I know where I'm from, and it's not Ellery. I mean, there's two, but it all depends on how well you know the states and the very small towns in the state. And Innery is very, very small. And I said, I've got to get out of, one, the town, the state, and then just see other stuff, which is, why I decided to do active duty.
Okay. Did you ever imagine enlisting in the Army that you would become a general? Like, what was the process to get to that point, and did you ever imagine getting to this point?
No, but I think the great thing about South Carolina State, if you were to go to our Hall of Fame, I mean, there's a ton of generals on the wall from South Carolina State. I mean, in fact, South Carolina State produces the most black general officers, second to West Point, only second to West Point. So there's tons. So as you go through the program here, I mean, you're looking on the wall, you're going, wow, all these generals came from South Carolina State. So it's very similar to West Point. So part of it is what you can be, because you can see it. You can literally see it on the walls. And I like to say to people a lot of times, you can't dream what you can't see. But if you can see it, you're like, okay, that means it's possible. So always knew in the back of my mind, it's a possibility. And you have to put in a lot of work, though. So, I mean, that's the key thing that, gets you anywhere. There's never an easy button, especially in the Army or any of our services. I mean, it's always hard work. You can, outwork the best of them. There's a lot of talented people, but there's a great saying that hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. And I think that's another reason, why I've made it to this point. Been around a lot of talented people, but you always have to put in the work because somebody is always out there working harder than you, right? I don't care how great you do, how great you think you are, what, your boss told you, somebody's working, harder than you at any given time to be better. And you have to have that in the back of your mind.
Wow. So on that note, with working hard, how was competition? Because I know it can get competitive, as I assume, getting to your ranks and just even in the officer world in general.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with competition with your peers and also just maintaining friendships and uplifting people around you, but still making sure that you come out with something?
Yeah, no, that's a great point because I learned early not to compete. As a young second lieutenant, I was very competitive, and to the point, I think it was to my detriment. So it wasn't, anything bad. I mean, I was still okay with my peers and, my platoon that I had. I mean, we were all, interactive within the company. But me personally, I mean, I was very competitive because I thought that's what it was about. You just compete and you kind of bump everybody out, even if that's your peer group, your fellow, platoon leaders and lieutenants. And so I competed, very hard. I was going to be better than you. My platoon was going to be better than yours. And that's just how I thought you operated. And it wasn't until I got my first counseling where the company commander told me, it was like, you're not a good team player. Like what I thought that's what it was about. But I understood immediately what he meant is you've got to still be a good teammate, team player. You can be competitive, but just be a good teammate, team player. And so from that point, I learned the key thing is don't compete when nobody's counting. I mean, everybody's counting on you to be a good team player, contribute to the team, but don't, compete to the detriment of the team. And a lot of times, nobody's really counting. You're counting in your head because you're thinking somebody's going, ooh, that's good. Ooh, that was awesome. Ooh, you got that. They're not. Nobody's in the stands, going, oh, Sergeant Weaver, awesome, great, chalk that up. Dawson, great job. I mean, nobody's really, watching, in that sense. But you compete. It's friendly, healthy competition. So I learned that, and that changed my mindset immediately to where, don't compete when nobody's counting. But, again, don't let your ambition turn into competition either. And so that was, a key thing as well. You can still be very ambitious, but don't compete your way to where you're, we call it pointy elbows. You're just, kind of elbowing people out and not making friends and making enemies along the way.
Wow, that's good.
How has your family been supportive of your decision to join and all the progression? And I'm sure you've probably been to all these different stations and stuff moving. Like, how have they been supportive in your journey?
Yeah, if you were to ask my wife, I proposed to her like right up the street, like a couple of buildings up the street. And her father was in the Army, so he was a retired command sergeant major. And, so he was retiring as I joined the Army. And one thing that she said that I didn't know about that she told her dad was, she said, I'm never going to marry a soldier. She says, I'm not, because I've moved around, I've done this, I'm not marrying a soldier. And then she meets me, she didn't know I was, in ROTC, she found that out later. But then at that point, love happens, and so she had to stick with me. But she kind of knew what the lifestyle would be like, and she likes to travel, and she understands, her contributions to not just me, but our family. And we have two sons who both, one is still here at South Carolina State, and the other graduated from South Carolina State as well, and he's a captain in the Army. So we thought that our kids, at least one or both of them, wouldn't want to do anything Army military related. And then our oldest son is a captain in the Army, and you would think with all the moving and the adjustments and overseas and CONUS, you name it, that they wouldn't want any part of it. But they've embraced it because I think they learn a great deal just from the travel and being around soldiers and families and everything else.
Okay. You have anything?
Yeah. So with your kids, what were some qualities you noticed in them or that you instilled in them to help them succeed, not specifically in ROTC, but just to have that hard work ethic like you had?
Yeah, I would say resiliency. They gained that just from their time moving around. I mean, if I look back on their life, which again, me growing up in South Carolina, K through 12, same friends, same classmates, same teachers all the way through. With our youngest, I mean, he went to 11 different schools in 12 years. Our oldest went to 10 different schools in 12 years. So they constantly were moving around, for a lot of different reasons. I'm deployed, we go overseas. I mean, so they're constantly moving. But their resiliency, they gain that very early. So anything that would be thrown at them they could always bounce back. And I think they just, took that as a part of their DNA, their character as they grew up. And so for them to, come to school here, and we're, up in New York, I mean, they were totally okay with that. They can survive on their own. I mean, they just grew up very quick. And one thing I always told them is, you can try anything you want, just never quit. Just don't quit. And then they learned that as young kids, is because, I mean, I learned it. I quit football in the 3rd grade, and my dad wouldn't let me play another sport for I couldn't play in anything. I mean, not a chess club if I wanted to. He was like, you quit, you're not playing in anything. And it wasn't until I got to the 7th grade that I was allowed to play sports again. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm not quitting anything ever again. But that was the thing I taught them. It's like, if you start it, you finish it. You may not like it. You don't have to do it again. Don't quit. And then they both did. So they played sports, clubs, I mean, violin, you name it. Whatever they started, as long as you finish, it's like, we're good. But don't quit. You're not quitting in the middle. Right. And so they had that as part of their DNA too.
Wow. Awesome. Is there what's the best part of your career? Like, what's something that sticks out for you, or whether it's like a duty station or a position that you were in or something like that? Like, what's one big memory that has impacted your career?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's either of those. It's not the duty station. I tell people, don't get, fixated with, where you go. I mean, we've been to Hawaii, and I've seen people be in Hawaii and be miserable. It's like, well, you wanted to come to Hawaii. It's like, it's a postcard every day, and you wanted to really get here, but now you're miserable because, I mean, you figure out it's an island and you go stir crazy. So, it's not about the place, and I wouldn't say about a rank either. It's not really about the rank, but it is about the people, because that's what kept me in. I mean, the amount of people you get to influence and help, and you always use whatever rank you have, use that rank for good, is something that I learned, and you use it to help people, and you see people flourish because all they need is a little boost, a little help. And I think the best story that I could share, and it's plenty of them just like this one, had a young private come to my unit, and and for whatever reason I said, where do you live? And he said, he told me, and I said, that's on my way home, so I'm going to stop by your house on my way home. And I stopped by his house, and it was like him, his wife, a little baby. Baby's probably about, less than a year old, and they had a couch, a table, no chairs, and a mattress in the room. And I'm like, just lose my mind. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Wow. And so I said, follow me home. And we had and I was a captain. We had extra furniture. I loaded up on a truck. We take it back to him. I went into work the next day, had a very candid conversation with, the chain of command. I'm like, what are we thinking? And, and so everybody got themselves straight, took care of it. Long story short, and I wrote him a note. I love writing notes, but I learned that from, one of my old commanders. I just wrote a note of encouragement, and I would do that quite a bit. And sometimes you forget what you put. And so years later, he sends me a note, and he's a master sergeant. And he was like, now, of course, with social media, he took a picture of that note that I gave him, back in like 98, 99, somewhere in there. And I'm looking at the date of it, and I'm like, oh my God. First I'm thinking, what did I write? So I'm opening it up on, on my phone, and I'm like, okay, I didn't write anything bad, But he was a master sergeant. I mean, he was just doing all this great stuff, and you're like, that's what it's about. Mm-hmm. That is what it's about, because, I didn't know the impact of that. You don't know the impact of that note. Mm-hmm. You don't know the impact of those actions. And that's not being, braggadocious or anything of that nature. You're just taking care of people. I mean, just like now, we talk about people first. I mean, just take care of people. It's simple. It's not, and I get that question all the time. It's like, what does people first mean? It's like, if you take somebody furniture that doesn't have it, that's taking care of people, right? You write them a note, that's taking care of people. I mean, those kind of things. And it pays off, because years later, not expecting it, and you're not expecting a single thing in return, to see that note come back, you're like, that's what it's about. You inspired somebody to do something.
Absolutely. Because you never know that could have impacted him staying in or getting out.
Right.
So it's the small things that people don't realize that can change somebody so drastically.
Yeah. And people like that will give it back. I mean, It's just like, we do the thing paying it forward. I mean, it's just like you go somewhere and somebody's like, hey, they paid for that. Oh, so now you feel compelled to do it for somebody else. The average person does. So when somebody does that, for a soldier, an action like that, they're going to feel compelled to pay it back, because like somebody did this for me or did this for me, gave me something, then they're going to want to pay it back.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I wanted to ask on that note, what type of community did you keep around you? I know you moved around a lot, but Sometimes we hear the phrase, you are who you're around. So what type of community or what type of group of people in the workplace did you, like to keep in your circle that kept you with people first mindset?
One word, positivity. I don't like negative, so I keep positive people around me and like to be around positive people. Because, I know personally, being around, negativity, sarcasm, pessimism, it just drains me. It's just like, I don't like it. It doesn't feel right. It just drains me. But if, you're positive, because there's always going to be a bad day. There's always going to be a day where you don't feel like it. But, you come in, people around you are positive, they'll pick you up. It's like, because somebody is having, regardless of what it is, somebody guaranteed is having a worse day somewhere. Right? And it might not be around you, but somebody is. And even if there's a death in the family, somebody may have had two. And so you have to think of it that way. It's like, this is bad. This is really, really bad. But there's somebody out there that always has it worse. And that's the bright side of it. So I'm never the type to, like to be around negative people or just have negativity floating around you, because it just doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. But positivity is my community.
Have you ever, have you ever changed the unit? So let's just say, you go to one of your new units or duty station and it's already negative. What is one instance where you have had to come in and be like, listen, this is not going to fly? Oh,
I've been in more than one. That's been the case. And especially that's another reason that keeps you going, because you can always be in an environment like that, in your mind, at least for me, you would say, if I ever get to that position, that's not going to be my unit. I would love to command that unit or command, that size unit. And if I'm in charge, that's not going to be my unit, because I've been in those units. And then when you get to that point, you're like, okay, now you have the rank. You're commanding that unit that you said. So now what are you going to do? And you do it. And so I've definitely gone into environments that have been bad, like really bad, and flip it around. But again, it's just bringing out the positivity, the goodness. Letting people see where they're at and go, we're much better than this. But it takes a lot of leader energy to get to that point, but it's doable. And it's hard because you break a lot of things, because you go to people that are not, doing what they're supposed to be doing, or not displaying the characteristics that they should. And you call people on that, and people will get mad, they'll get upset, but you're like, you're hurting the entire team, one person or two people. And either you got to go or you got to change, one or the other. But when you're in those positions to do it, then you can do it, and it changes. It really does.
Okay.
This is going great.
Yeah, this is good.
I'm learning.
Podcasts are cool.
I know. Good. I love just because it's a casual conversation. Like, it's not like a briefing or something where you have to be straightforward. Yeah. So it allows people to be a little bit more comfortable in allowing service members to see people in different light. Like, it's not always serious. Yeah. There's times where you have to be serious and times where you can just have a casual conversation and it be okay. Yeah,
we're all people, regardless of rank. That's what, most, I think, forget. It's like,
exactly.
I take this off, you met me on the street, you'd think, okay, just regular old Joe Blow. We're all people.
So one question I have is, I know you've been in for a while. You're a 3-star and everything. Where do you see your career going? Because, you're pretty high up there. So is there anything after this, or are you kind of looking towards retirement, or like what do you see in your future? Yeah, no, it could be. You never know. But I tell people, regardless of whatever rank you achieve, you never arrive. And so it's not that, I have a goal or had like a goal, I want to get to that point, or 4 stars. Things just come to you, and you always focus on, where you're at. be where your boots are, focus on what's in front of you. The next thing will come. That's just always been my belief. And when I was here, I ran, hurdles. That was, my track event. And the thing I know about hurdles is you take one at a time. You don't focus on the last one. You don't focus on the next one. You focus on the one in front of you. And that's the way I've approached my career. It's like, if I get to this point, great, awesome. I get to the next point. But if you don't focus, at the point in time that you're in, then you won't get to the next thing. So it's just like this one. Because I'll get that question too. And not to, wave it off or brush that question off. Is like, whatever comes next, and the Army could say, hey, time for you to retire, or, hey, we've got something else for you. Okay, all good. But all I'm worried about right now is where I am, right now. And that's literally how I've approached every step of my career. It's like, this hurdle, I'm over that one. Okay, now where's the next one? And then just keep going after that. Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I've been around for a while, so I've seen people who chase after the rank. Yeah. And I've had a supervisor who told me, you're either going to be that person who chases after the rank, or you're going to be the person who chases after the job and knowing everything you can to be able to do that job. And those who are chasing the rank aren't focused on everything else around them, or like you said, they're so fixated on that next step that they're not worried about what's in front of them, but also it might take them longer because they're just so worried about getting there instead of just letting it happen.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you did bring that up, because it's important for people to realize, like, yes, it's good to think about the future and like have goals and everything, but being so fixated on it can definitely have some effects in some areas.
Yeah, you turn the noise up on yourself when you do that, because now you're thinking about, if it's this rank, I got to do this job, I got to do this, and so you just add more stuff to the atmosphere, and then you're just turning that noise up, and it drives you crazy. So the best thing is just turn that noise down. I mean, I'm focusing on where I'm at, what I'm doing, do that to the best of my ability, and then typically it's going to work out. But if you're got all these other variables that you're just trying to keep your eye on and focus, and I'm watching this person, watching that person, this person did this, did that, you're just turning that noise up, and it's going to be like, Superman on top of the building. You can't turn it off, because now you made it so noisy that you can't focus on the simple thing of doing what it is you're supposed to do in the first place. I give advice to, officers, and they talk about, sir, when should I get my master's? I'm like, why? You're captain, you're a lieutenant. Why do you want to get your master's now? It's not going to get you promoted any faster. But they think that. And I said, there's points in time in your career where, guess what? You can get your master's and be going to school, and the Army's going to pay for it at the same time. So why are you, just bifurcating your focus, whereas your focus is like on those soldiers in that unit are doing this job, but you're trying to do this, that, everything else. You've just made life noisy for yourself. And then, because that's what I did. I mean, I waited until the point in time, I get to Leavenworth, CGSC, and, I do my master's, I do my coursework, but you're in school. So if you do more school while you're in school, that's okay. But I don't want to do more school, but that's different based on the compos, right? You're in a different compo. Yeah, you have to juggle that, but that is not noisy. That's what you have to juggle, because that is the day-to-day life. If you're in a different compo, I've got to do stuff related to my military career. I've got my civilian career, and I've got to balance and bounce, all that. That's just balancing. That is pure balance, but it's designed that way, and it's not noisy. But then if you're just pure compo one, then it's like, okay, you don't have to juggle all these things, because it's set up a different way just based on the component that you're in.
What would you pass to high schoolers who may not be coming from ideal situations? I know you had mentioned a statement earlier, if you can't see it, you can't dream it.
Right.
So what does someone need to do to get themselves in front of just that one star to get them to have hope that they can be something great?
Yeah. The first thing is, you got to look, when I talk to young groups, is, I said, whenever somebody tells you what you can't do, you got to look at that as a glass ceiling. Your job is to break that ceiling, because, I was told what you can't do. You're not college material. And that inspired me to this day. And I think a lot of our youth will have somebody that will say something like that. Well, I want to do this. I want to be a news anchor or whatever. It's like, well, why do you want to do that? They're not saying, why do you want to do that? They're saying you can't do that, is what they're saying. But you've got to take that as your motivation, your inspiration to find your way to get to it. And in the military, regardless of, whatever branch, will get you there. Because you think about just the Army, how many career fields we have, 150. You think about some of the incentives that will help you out if you come from a bad situation to where, you can get a bonus going in. It doesn't mean you have to stay in forever, but it's just like, just give yourself a good landing spot to start with, and then go from there. Most people don't do that. They just try to jump from step 1 to step 5. Whereas if I want to get to 10, then just kind of paint that path. This is going to at least get me a better start. I get some, money in my pocket. I get some, good experience. I can potentially, depending on what the job is, I get the experience in that. I'm not, going bankrupt trying to, go to nursing school or something, whereas the Army can do it for me. And then I go branch out from that point. And it's just give yourself a better start, right? And the military is like the way. I'm totally convinced my kids wouldn't be in, not that I had to twist their arm, but I think they just saw that without us talking about it. It's like, okay, I might not want to stay for like 20 years, but I can get a pretty good start, be pretty stable right out of school.
Right. Wow.
Absolutely. Do you have any other questions?
I do not.
All right, sir. Is there anything else that you would like to kind of end with or close out, or before we end the podcast today? No,
I just want to thank you guys for what you do. I mean, with these podcasts, it's a lot of, ways we can inform people, and using all the means available to do it is pretty awesome, because some people just don't have time. I don't have time to read something. I don't have time to, scroll through something, on my social media, but to listen, however, we do it is great. It's just, inform people of what's out there, and just help people, get a difference of perspective and opinion. I mean, that's all this really does, is just give people difference of opinion, and which is great. And so whether we do that, internal, I think it helps our external audiences, and for our state, I mean, it does a lot of great things, because people don't know. They don't know if they don't wear the cloth of our nation, like the three of us sitting up here. They don't know. They just think we're like those people. Like, what do you do? You're like those people. You're different, right? And I mean, but no, we're not. We're the same as you. We're cut from society. I mean, if you were to tell your background, you would share your background. It's like, oh, okay, you're just like me. You're just like my daughter. You're just like my sister. You're just like my brother. I mean, yeah, because we're like those people too. We just kind of had a different focus, a different perspective, and we're doing things a little bit different. So thank you guys for what you do.
Absolutely, we appreciate that, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know that you guys are going around and checking some things out, so it was awesome for you to take the time to sit with us, to be able to share your story that we can share with everybody else. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of your visit while you're here.
Yeah, I will. It'll be awesome. 75 years of history here with ROTC, so it'll be a great day, because it's a lot of stuff, a lot of activities for today. So thank you for your time as well.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. Well, if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.